The diagram opposite shows the graphs of the functions f of x maps to x squared minus 4x plus 3, g of x maps to 2x, and h of x maps to 3 minus x. By identifying which graph represents each function, use the diagram to solve the following simultaneous equations. Okay, so we see that we have a U-shaped graph, so our equation must have an x squared in it, and we see that f of x maps to x squared minus 4x plus 3 is the only function that has an x squared, so f of x must be the U-shaped graph. So I've highlighted that in yellow to show that they match. So this must be f of x. So next we have g of x, which is 2x, and h of x, which is 3 minus x. So g of x maps to 2x is the same thing as y equals 2x. So now that this is in the form of y equals mx plus c, so basically when the y is on its own, we know that whatever is stuck onto the x is the slope of the line. And 2 is positive, and we can see that this line here, highlighted in blue, is going uphill, and we can also come up with the slope by doing rise over run. So we have a rise of 4, because the difference between 8 and 4 is 4, and we have a run of 2, because if this is 0 and this is 4, then from here to here must be 2. So rise over run, 4 over 2 is 2, so we have a slope of 2. So we know that the blue line highlighted here in blue is the graph g of x, because first of all it's positive, it's going uphill, and 2 is positive, and also because the slope is actually 2, so 4 over 2 is 2. So we can do the same thing with h of x maps to 3x minus x. So h of x maps to can be rewritten as y equals, so we have y equals minus x plus 3. So minus x is the same thing as minus 1. So there we have minus 1x, so we know we have a slope of minus 1. So this line here that I've highlighted in pink is going downhill, so it must be our function h of x, but just to double check, we're going to do rise over run. So we have a rise of 2, because remember our y-axis is going up in steps of 2. We have a run of 2, because our x-axis is going in steps of 1, and 2 over 2 is 1. And it's going downhill, so it's minus, so we definitely have a slope of minus 1. Also, we could say that y equals 2x is the same thing as y equals 2x plus 0. And 0 is our y-intercept, so we can see that the blue graph, so our g of x function is highlighted in blue, it crosses the y-axis at 0. And likewise, we can see that for our pink line, it crosses the y-axis at 3. And here we have a y-intercept of plus 3. So that's a few ways of working it out. But the fact that the yellow graph is a U-shape tells us that it must be x squared, so that straight away tells us the first one. The fact that the pink line is going downhill, well, it definitely has to be the bottom one, because that's a minus slope. And the fact that the blue line is going uphill, it definitely has to be the middle one, because that's positive slope. You could, if you wanted to, rewrite x squared minus 4x plus 3 by completing the square to get your minimum point, on your U-shaped graph. But it's enough just to label them. So now we know what each of our functions are. So our yellow graph is our function f of x, our blue graph is our function g of x, and our pink graph is our function h of x. So we have identified each of the graphs, and now we need to specifically use this diagram to solve them simultaneously. So to find their points of intersection. So let's take f of x, which is x squared minus 4x plus 3, and g of x, which is 2x. And both of these graphs can be equal to y, so we can swap the f of x maps to for y equals, and we can swap the g of x maps to for y equals as well. So they've just changed this around the other way around, but it still means the exact same thing. So solving simultaneously, well, if we wanted to do it algebraically, we could just sub 2x in place of that y, and then solve for x, and then sub our x values back into the simpler equation to solve for y. But we're not asked to do it algebraically, we're asked to use the diagram. So we're interested where f of x is equal to g of x. So where do they cross? Where do they meet? What are their points of intersection? So we just have to find their points of intersection from the graph. So if we look closely at our graph, so we're interested in the yellow and the blue graph. So we can see this is one of the points of intersection. So starting with our x value, well, if this is 5 and this is 6, then this is about 5.5 on our x-axis. And then looking at our y-axis, well, if this is 8, this is 10, this is 12, then right here is about 11. So one point of intersection is 5.5, 11. And then the other point of intersection we can see between the blue and the yellow graph is right here. So we're interested in our x value first of all. So if this is 0 and this is 4, then this is 1, and halfway between them would be 0.5. So our x value is 0.5. And then on our y-axis, we're interested in this point here. So if this is 4 and this is 8, then that's 2, and halfway between 2 and 0 would be 1. So we have an x value of 0.5 and a y value of 1. Okay, so just to summarize, if we let our two graphs equal each other, f of x and g of x, their points of intersection are 5.5, 11 and 0.5, 1. Okay, so now we're going to do the same with f of x maps to x squared minus 4x plus 3. So we're going to swap f of x maps to for y equals, so it means the exact same thing. And h of x maps to 3 minus x is the exact same thing as x plus y equals 3. So the h of x maps to has been swapped for y equals, and the minus x was brought over the equal sign to become positive x. So x plus y is equal to 3. So again, the yellow equation represents the U-shaped yellow graph, f of x, and the pink equation represents the pink straight line. So if we wanted to solve these algebraically, we could rewrite so that either the x or y was on its own, sub into the other equation, find our x's or our y's, and then solve for the other letter. But we weren't asked to solve algebraically, we were asked to solve using the diagram. So we're interested in where f of x is equal to h of x, so we're interested in the points of intersection. So let's have a closer look. Okay, so one of the points of intersection is right here, and it has an x value of 3 and a y value of 0. So 3, 0 is one of our points of intersection. And our other point of intersection between the pink and the yellow graph is here, and it has an x value of 0 and a y value of 3. So we're interested in where these two graphs are equal, so their points of intersection or where they cross or meet, and that is 0, 3 and 3, 0.